The year was 3027. In the far reaches of the Orion cluster, a silent message spread like wildfire across the galaxy's communication grids. One of the Council's strongest worlds, Velis Prime, had gone completely dark. No ships, no signals, no life. Every satellite, beacon, and scanner showed nothing but cold silence. The Galactic Council wasted no time. Standing before millions in a broadcast from Varanine, the Council's floating city, High Chancellor Valair made the announcement that would send shockwaves through every corner of the stars. "We have seen this before." Valair's voice echoed across every star system. "The ones we banned. The ones we warned you about. Humanity is responsible." Across dozens of planets, citizens stopped to listen. Some believed the words without question. Others whispered in doubt. But most remained silent, afraid to speak against the Council's ruling. Meanwhile, far away from the Council's reach, deep in the shadow of Earth's old moon, a man named William Carter stood alone in his quarters on Lunar Base 17. The small human outpost had long been hidden under layers of shielding and cloaking systems. Humanity had no part in galactic affairs anymore. Not since the banishment 10 years ago. William sat at a small desk, staring at an old holographic photo of Earth. It had been years since he'd seen his home planet with his own eyes. The memory felt distant now, like a dream slipping through his fingers. Suddenly, his console buzzed. The screen flickered to life, showing a scrambled message. The voice was broken, but the words were clear enough to shake him to his core. "They're blaming us again. You must return before it's too late. No sender. No signal trace." But William knew who it was. Only one person in the galaxy would dare contact him after all these years. Mira Voss, an old ally who once stood by him in the council chambers before humanity's fall. William leaned back in his chair, running his hands over his face. He had promised himself never to return to the stars. Earth's leadership had made it clear, stay hidden, stay silent. But now, the council had drawn the same old weapon again, fear. He stood up and looked toward the airlock where his personal ship, the Obsidian Blade, was docked. It was an old stealth ship, patched together from older models. It was fast, quiet, and invisible to most scanners. He hadn't flown in years, but he kept it ready for this exact moment. William grabbed his black flight suit and sealed the collar. He knew this was a one-way trip. If the council caught him, they would erase him. If Earth found out, they would exile him again. But none of that mattered now. The truth had to come out. He made his way through the dim hallways of Lunar Base 17. A few guards nodded as he passed, unaware of his plan. He entered the hangar, where the Obsidian Blade waited in the shadows. Its sleek, black frame almost seemed to vanish into the darkness. William climbed aboard, powering up the systems quietly. He didn't trigger any alerts. No one stopped him. As the engines hummed to life, he took one last look at the base. He whispered to himself, "Forgive me, but I have to know." The ship lifted off, slipping through the base's exit tunnel and into open space. William set the course for Velis Prime, the silent planet at the center of the storm. But getting there wouldn't be easy. Around Earth's system, the Council blockade stood like a steel wall. Dozens of warships, drones, and scanning fields stretched across the border. No ship had passed through in years. William narrowed his eyes. He had one advantage, the Obsidian Blade's cloaking system. It wasn't perfect, but it might buy him the few minutes he needed. He approached the blockade slowly. His heart pounded in his chest as he adjusted the ship's power levels, masking his energy signature. One false move, and the entire blockade would light up. The ship glided forward, slipping through the first layer of scanners. The red lights on his console flickered, warning him of nearby patrols. He held his breath, guiding the ship between two massive cruisers. Their weapons hummed with deadly power, but they didn't notice him. Not yet. Finally, the Obsidian Blade cleared the last patrol line. William let out a long breath of relief. He had made it. He looked out the front window, seeing the distant glow of Velis Prime on his star map. He pressed the throttle forward. "I'm coming," he whispered. What he would find there, he didn't know, but he was ready to face whatever waited in the dark. The journey to Velis Prime felt longer than William had expected. Alone in the dark, with nothing but the quiet hum of the ship around him, his mind kept drifting back to the past. He remembered standing in the council hall, once seen as the voice of humanity. He remembered the betrayal, the vote that ended it all, the silence that followed. But none of that mattered now. He wasn't going back to beg for forgiveness. He was going to find the truth. As the ship neared the Velis system, William slowed down and brought up the planet scans on his console. What he saw chilled him to the bone. Nothing. No energy readings. No ship traffic. No life signs. Velis Prime had been home to nearly 8 billion beings from 5 different species. It had been a world of light and life. Now, it floated in the dark like a dead rock. William adjusted the ship's course, preparing for a landing. He passed over broken satellites drifting in orbit. Some looked damaged, but most were simply frozen, as if something had drained them of power. As the obsidian blade entered the planet's atmosphere, William could see the cities below. They were still standing, untouched by war or disaster. Towers reached for the sky. Streets stretched for miles. But there was no movement, no lights, no sounds. It was like the whole planet had stopped breathing. He landed the ship on the edge of a city called Dravos Core, once the capital of Velis Prime. William grabbed his gear, a light plasma pistol, a scanning device, and a portable data recorder. He knew he didn't have much time. If the council tracked his ship's signature, they'd be here soon. The city felt wrong the moment he stepped outside. The air was cold. Too cold for a planet like Velis Prime, which was known for its warm, stable climate. The sky was filled with strange dark clouds, moving slowly, unnaturally. There was no wind, no sound, not even the hum of distant power lines. William walked through the empty streets, scanning for life signs. His device stayed silent. As he moved deeper into the city, he noticed something strange. On the walls, the ground, even the rooftops, black crystal formations. They were thin at first, like tiny veins running along the surfaces. But the further he went, the larger they grew, spreading like dark roots. He crouched down and touched one carefully with his scanner. The device flashed red, showing strange energy readings he couldn't explain. It wasn't natural. It wasn't anything he had seen before. What is this? He thought. He followed the crystals to the city's main power hub. The building was massive, designed to provide energy to the entire capital. But the entrance was sealed tight, the systems dead. William pulled out his plasma cutter and sliced through the door. He stepped inside, his boots crunching on the cracked floor. The crystals were thicker here, covering the walls like a living web. He made his way to the control room and activated the backup systems using his portable power cell. The lights flickered weakly, and a few screens came alive. He searched the records for anything useful. One entry stood out, a distress signal never sent. He played the recording. This is Chief Engineer Valenrek of Velis Prime. The power grid is failing. Something is spreading through the systems. We try to shut it down, but it's alive. The message cut off. That was all. William leaned back, his mind racing. The council's public message had mentioned none of this. They had spoken of bombings, of terrorist attacks, of human weapons. But here, there were no signs of violence. No signs of any fight. Only this strange black infection. Suddenly, his console beeped. Multiple ships had just entered orbit. Council patrols. They were scanning the surface, searching for any signs of life. William cursed under his breath. They must have picked up the power signal he just activated. He didn't have long. He grabbed the data core from the terminal and sprinted back toward his ship. The crystals seemed to hum softly around him now, almost like they were awake. He didn't stop to think. He ran as fast as he could. As he reached the ship and sealed the hatch, the scanners showed the council ships closing in. He fired up the engines and lifted off. The patrols detected him immediately, moving in to block his escape. William pushed the engines to their limit, weaving through the city's tall towers. Laser blasts lit up the sky behind him. The obsidian blade shuddered as enemy fire scraped its shields. He cleared the city's edge and shot back into orbit. The blockade ships were faster, stronger, and had better weapons. But William had one thing they didn't: a ship built to disappear. He activated the cloaking field, cutting the ship's power to minimum. He drifted toward the shadows of the nearest moon, hoping to lose them in the darkness. For a moment, it seemed like the Council ships had lost track of him. They circled the planet a few times before pulling back. William let out a heavy breath and restarted the ship's engines. He had the data. He had the proof that something was deeply wrong. But he knew he couldn't face this alone. There was only one place left to go. Vera 9, the home of the Council, the heart of the lies, the place where it all began. He set the ship's course and stared out into the stars. He had a feeling this was just the beginning. The journey to Vera 9 felt heavier this time. William Carter sat in the cockpit of the Obsidian Blade, staring at the flashing star map. The data core he had taken from Velis Prime sat on the console beside him. His thoughts kept circling the same questions. What was that black crystal? Why had the Council hidden it? And why were they blaming humanity again? The Council knew something, but they weren't telling the galaxy the truth. William was sure of that now. The people deserved to know. But to expose the truth, he had to find someone who could help him from the inside. One name came to his mind. Mira Voss. Once, she had been one of the Council's top scientists. She had studied alien technologies and energy systems. She had also been one of the few voices who had defended humanity during the banishment. After the Council turned on Earth, Mira had disappeared. William hoped she was still alive and still on his side. Vera 9 slowly came into view. The city floated in space above a dying star, its towers glowing bright against the blackness. Giant ships moved in tight patrols around it. Scanners covered every entry point. It was the most heavily protected place in the Orion cluster. William knew he couldn't land without being detected, so he brought up the shadow ports on his map, secret docking zones used by smugglers and exiles. There was one still active on the far side of the station, hidden in the wreckage of old mining ships. He guided the Obsidian Blade toward the wreck field, switching off the main engines and drifting through the metal graveyard. Pieces of broken ships floated everywhere, creating a maze of debris. Finally, he found the port, an old cargo bay sealed by a rusty airlock. He docked the ship and stepped out, checking his pistol and the data core one more time. He pulled up his hood and started moving through the narrow tunnels, keeping his head down. This part of Vera 9 was forgotten by most. It was where smugglers, spies, and outlaws made deals in the dark. William found a small trader's den and asked the bartender in a low voice, "I need to find Mira Voss." The bartender gave him a long, careful look before nodding toward a back door. "She's still breathing for now." William followed the path through the narrow halls until he reached a small workshop. Inside, a woman with short dark hair and sharp eyes was working on a broken energy core. She didn't look surprised when William stepped in. "It took you long enough," Mira Voss said, standing up slowly. William let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "You sent the message." Mira nodded. "I had to. The Council is lying again. They're using us as their shield, like before." William walked forward and placed the data core on her table. "I went to Velis Prime. I saw what happened. It wasn't us." Myra's eyes narrowed as she plugged the core into her terminal. She watched the data scroll across the screen. Power failures, crystal growth, and a last unfinished distress call. "I've seen this before," she whispered. William leaned in. "What is it?" She turned to face him, her voice tense. "A weapon. One that was supposed to be destroyed a long time ago. It's Carthian technology." William froze. The Carthian Empire was Velair's home, the most powerful species on the Council, the ones who had pushed the hardest to ban humanity. "Velair's behind this," William said under his breath. Mira nodded slowly. "He's using the weapon to wipe out his rivals and blaming Earth so no one questions him." William clenched his fists. He had suspected the Council was hiding something, but this was far worse than he had imagined. "We have to stop him," William said firmly. "We need to tell the other species." Myra's face darkened. "Do you think they'll listen?" "Velair controls them with fear. He's been preparing for this for years." William shook his head. "We have proof now. We have to try." Mira hesitated for a moment before she finally nodded. "There's a Council meeting tomorrow. If we can reach the public broadcast chambers, we can show the data." William knew it was risky. If they were caught, Velair would kill them both before they ever reached the chamber. But he also knew there was no other way. "We do it tonight," he said. Mira packed her tools and loaded the data core into a secure drive. They left the workshop and made their way toward the upper levels of Vera 9. The halls were busy with guards and council members moving between towers. Security was tighter than ever. William and Mira moved through the crowds, keeping their faces low. They reached a service tunnel that led to the public broadcast chamber. But as they stepped inside, the lights suddenly flashed red. "Stop! Hands in the air!" Dozens of council enforcers swarmed in, weapons drawn. William cursed under his breath. They had been set up. At the front of the squad, High Chancellor Valayer himself stepped into view. His silver robe flowed behind him as he walked closer, a cruel smile on his face. Well, William Carter, I expected you would come crawling back." William's jaw tightened. "You're the one behind this, Valayer. You're murdering your own people and blaming us to cover it up." Valayer chuckled coldly. "You always were a poor player in this game. You still think truth matters in a galaxy ruled by fear." Mira stepped forward, clutching the data drive. "We have proof. We'll show everyone." Valayer's smile faded. He nodded to his guards. "Kill them. Take the drive." Before the guards could move, William grabbed Myra's arm and pulled her toward a side door. They ran as plasma bolts rained down around them. They ducked into the shadows, weaving through narrow maintenance shafts. Valayer's voice echoed through the station speakers. "William Carter is a traitor. All units capture or kill on sight." The hunt had begun. William and Mira ran through the dark tunnels, knowing they had no friends left here. Only enemies. But William refused to stop. Not now. Not when the truth was finally within reach. He tightened his grip on Myra's hand as they disappeared deeper into the shadows of Vera 9. The dark tunnels of Vera 9 stretched for miles. William and Mira moved fast, their steps quiet but steady. Above them, alarms still echoed through the station. Valayer had every security unit searching for them. They couldn't go back. They couldn't stop. Mira led William through old service shafts, and used for decades. Pipes hissed with steam. Loose wires sparked overhead. The farther they went, the colder the air became. William glanced back more than once, expecting armed soldiers to appear. But none came. Not yet. Finally, they reached a small dock platform, hidden deep beneath the city. A single old cargo ship rested there. Its hull was rusted, its engines weak, but it would fly. Mira tapped a security panel, unlocking the ramp. "I used this ship before, when I left the council," she whispered. "It's slow, but it will get us out of here." William nodded and followed her inside. The ship's systems groaned as they powered up. He turned to Mira. "Where are we going?" Mira adjusted the controls, setting the course. "There's a Carthian research station, long abandoned, or so the council claims. It's in the Ravian Belt, deep in uncharted space. That's where the black crystal weapon was first created." William sat beside her, tightening the safety straps on his seat. "You've known about this place all along." Mira didn't answer right away. Her face was heavy with regret. "I worked on the early research," she admitted quietly. "I didn't know what it was really for. They told us it was energy research, but it was something else. When I found out the truth, I tried to shut it down. Valayer made sure I couldn't." William leaned back, letting the words sink in. Mira had been part of the project. That explained why Valayer had wanted her silenced so badly. The ship broke free from Vera 9's lower decks and slipped into open space. They didn't use the main gates. Instead, they took a narrow, dangerous flight path through the nearby asteroid belt. The trip was rough. The old ship shook with every rock they dodged, but they made it through without alerting the patrols. Hours later, they reached the edge of the Ravian Belt. The area was dark and empty. No stars, no ships, just a silent field of broken rocks drifting through space. In the center, barely visible, floated a massive structure, the Carthian Research Station. William could see the damage even from a distance. The outer walls were cracked. Parts of the station had collapsed, but some lights still flickered deep inside. Mira set the ship down on the docking platform. As they stepped out, the cold hit them hard. The air was thin and dry. They wore their breath masks as they entered the station through a side hatch. The place smelled of burnt metal and dust. "Stay close," Mira whispered. They moved through broken hallways and dark labs. Most of the equipment had been smashed or stripped, but the crystals were still there, growing in thick clusters along the walls and floors, pulsing faintly with dark energy. William scanned them with his handheld device. "The same readings as Velis Prime," he confirmed. Mira nodded grimly. This is where it started. They reached the core chamber, a giant room filled with shattered machinery. In the center stood a tall control pillar, covered in thick black crystals. Mira walked toward it, wiping dust from the control screen. "This was the heart of the project," she explained. "We called it Project Eclipse. It was meant to be a planetary defense system. But something went wrong. The crystals started to spread on their own, feeding off energy, growing faster than we could control." William studied the pillar. Velair revived it and used it as a weapon. Mira pointed to the control logs on the screen. "Look at this. Someone reactivated the core months ago. They used remote access from Velair's command ship." William clenched his fists. It was all here. Proof that Velair had turned the abandoned weapon into a planet killer. Proof that humanity had nothing to do with it. He downloaded the logs to his data drive. Suddenly, the station shook violently. The walls groaned as metal twisted. "What was that?" William asked, looking around. Mira checked the sensors. "They found us. Velair's ships are here." William grabbed Myra's arm. "We have to leave. Now." They ran back through the collapsing halls. The crystals pulsed brighter, spreading faster as the station's systems began to fail. Sparks flew. Pipes burst. The station was coming apart. They reached the ship just as the first enemy cruiser opened fire. Explosions ripped through the outer walls. William powered up the engines. "Hold on." The ship launched from the platform, dodging debris and enemy fire. Velair's ships chased them through the belt, firing relentlessly. The old cargo ship wasn't fast enough to outrun them. William's mind raced. "We can't lead them back to the outer systems," he said. "We have to hide." Mira checked the star map. "There's a dark nebula ahead. We might lose them in the clouds." William pushed the engines to full power. The ship rocked and shuddered, but it held together. They raced toward the dark nebula, diving into the thick clouds of dust and gas. The enemy ships followed, but the sensors began to fail inside the cloud. William cut the engines and drifted silently, hoping to vanish in the darkness. Minutes passed. The enemy ships searched the area, but the clouds scrambled their scanners. One by one, they pulled back, leaving William and Mira floating in silence. William leaned back, breathing hard. Mira turned to him, her voice steady. "We have everything we need to bring Velair down." William nodded. "But we'll only get one shot." Mira stared out into the dark, her eyes filled with determination. "Then we make it count." They both knew what had to be done next. They had to take the truth to the entire galaxy. But Velair would be ready for them, and the final battle was only beginning. William Carter stood at the edge of the ship's control deck, staring into the swirling clouds of the dark nebula. His heart was racing. His mind was clear. They had everything they needed, proof that Velair was the real enemy. The only question now was how to show it to the galaxy. Behind him, Mira Voss worked at the ship's old communication terminal. She had connected the stolen data to the ship's systems, ready to send it out. But there was a problem. "This ship's transmitter isn't strong enough," Mira explained. "We need to reach the Galactic Network hub on Orion's edge. It's the only place powerful enough to broadcast across all star systems at once." William nodded. "Then that's where we go." Mira frowned. "Velair will expect it. He controls the hub." William already knew that, but there was no other choice. If they stayed in hiding, Velair would keep destroying planets and blaming humanity. More worlds would fall. More lives would be lost. "We go fast," William said. "We go hard. No stopping. No turning back." Mira agreed. She set the course. The old cargo ship groaned as the engines roared back to life, pushing them out of the nebula and back into open space. It was a long flight to Orion's edge, but they moved as quickly as the ship allowed. Along the way, they tapped into open communication channels. What they heard chilled them both. World after world had fallen silent. Aveni's, Draker, Seven, and Havros Prime, all dark, all blamed on human attacks. Velair's voice echoed on every broadcast, repeating the same lie again and again. Humanity has declared war on us all. Trust only the Council. Trust in Carthian leadership. But not everyone believed him. William and Mira heard scattered reports of rebellions breaking out on several worlds. Small groups refusing to follow Velair's orders. Protests on Council-controlled planets. Entire fleets pulling away from Carthian command. The galaxy was breaking apart. William leaned back in his seat, thinking hard. People are already doubting him. They just need proof. Mira looked up from the terminal. And if they get that proof, the Council could fall. The galaxy could turn to war. William nodded. It already has. By the time they reached Orion's edge, the space around the network hub was filled with ships, Council warships, rebel fighters, and scattered civilian fleets. The tension was clear. One wrong move, and the whole area would explode into open battle. Mira scanned the defense grid. We'll never get close without being shot down. William studied the map. There was one narrow path between two enemy lines, barely wide enough for their ship. We go through there, he said. Mira glanced at him. It's suicide. William leaned forward. Then let's make it count. He took control of the ship, pushing the engines as hard as they could go. The cargo ship shook violently as it shot toward the gap. Enemy ships locked weapons. Laser fire lit up the sky. William swerved and dodged, weaving through the crossfire. The ship's old hull groaned under the pressure. The shields dropped to critical. Sparks flew from the control panels. We're not going to make it, Mira shouted. But William didn't stop. Just as the ship was about to collapse, Mira hit a switch on the side panel, sending out a false transponder code, making us look like a Council ship. The enemy ships hesitated, holding their fire for just a few seconds, just enough time. William blasted through the gap, racing toward the network hub's lower docks. The ship crashed hard onto the platform, skidding to a stop. Alarms blared around them. We're here, William said, pulling Mira to her feet. Let's finish this. They grabbed the data core and ran into the hub's main tower. The halls were filled with Council soldiers. Velair's voice echoed over the speakers. The traitor William Carter is here. Kill him on sight. There was no turning back now. William and Mira fought their way through the corridors. Blaster fire filled the air. Explosions rocked the walls. The station was falling into chaos. Rebel forces, who had followed William's broadcast trails, stormed the station. The battle spread fast. Council soldiers fought to hold the tower. Rebel fighters pushed to take control. William and Mira reached the main broadcast room. The doors were sealed. Mira pulled out an energy spike and jammed it into the control panel. The lock snapped open. They rushed inside and locked the doors behind them. The broadcast terminal stood in the center, glowing faintly. Mira connected the data core. William stepped forward, looking into the wide recording lens. He pressed the transmit button. Across the entire Orion cluster, every screen, every comm link, every ship received the signal. William spoke clearly, his voice reaching every corner of the galaxy. My name is William Carter. I was once a voice for humanity on the Council. I come not with weapons, but with truth. The real enemy is not Earth. The real enemy is High Chancellor Velair. He has reactivated a forbidden Carthian weapon, Project Eclipse. He has used it to destroy Velis Prime and other worlds. He has blamed us to cover his betrayal. Mira brought up the proof on every screen. The research station logs, Velair's access codes, the activation records. The galaxy watched in silence. I ask you now, stand not with fear, but with truth. Stand not with the Council's lies, but with freedom. The choice is yours. William ended the broadcast. Mira turned to him. It's done. But before they could move, the door behind them exploded. Velair himself stepped through the smoke, surrounded by his elite guards. His face was filled with rage. You should have stayed in the dark, Velair hissed. William stood tall, ready for the final fight. The truth was out. The galaxy had seen it. But Velair wasn't finished. Not yet. The air was heavy with smoke. Sparks rained from the shattered ceiling. Alarms screamed across the network hub. And standing in the broken doorway was High Chancellor Valere, his cold eyes locked on William Carter. Behind him, a squad of Carthian enforcers in black armored suits raised their weapons, ready to fire. Mira Voss stood beside William, gripping her small blaster. But they both knew it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. Valere stepped closer, his voice filled with anger but steady as stone. "You've caused enough damage, Carter. You should have stayed hidden like the rest of your kind." William stood his ground. "You're finished, Valere. The truth is out. The galaxy knows what you've done." Valere smiled darkly. "Do you really think that matters? Fear is stronger than truth. Always has been. Always will be." William glanced at Mira. They had made it this far. They had exposed Valere's lies. But none of it would matter if they died here without stopping him. Valere raised his hand. "Kill them." The soldiers took aim. William and Mira dove for cover just as blaster fire tore through the broadcast room. The walls sparked and shattered around them. William fired back, forcing the guards to spread out. Mira grabbed the data core and ducked behind the central console. "We need to shut down the weapon," she shouted. William knew she was right. Even though the truth was out, Project Eclipse was still active. If Valere reached the control systems, he could destroy more worlds. They had to stop him now. William fired another round and ran toward a side door. Mira followed, covering their retreat. They sprinted down the narrow maintenance tunnels, the sound of soldiers chasing close behind. Valere's voice echoed over the speakers. "Carter, you can run, but you can't stop what's coming." William ignored him. He had only one goal left: find the control core and destroy the weapon. They reached the main power corridor. Ahead, a secure blast door blocked the way to the weapon's remote command link. William slammed his fist on the control panel. It was locked. Mira pulled out her energy spike again, forcing the door open. Suddenly, Valere's guards caught up, filling the corridor with fire. William spun around, firing back to keep them pinned down. "Get that door open," he yelled. Mira worked as fast as she could. The door cracked open just as William's blaster overheated. He dropped it and grabbed Myra's hand, pulling her inside. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in the control chamber. The room was dark, filled with humming energy cores. At the center stood a massive control console, linked directly to Project Eclipse. Mira ran to the console and plugged in the data core. "I can shut it down, but I need time." William stood in front of her, fists clenched. He knew Valere would come through that door any second. And he did. With a blast of energy, the door exploded inward. Valere stepped through alone, holding a high-powered plasma blade. The blue light hummed in the dark. William faced him, fists raised. "It ends here, Valere." Valere smiled coldly. "Yes, it does." He lunged forward. The plasma blade swung fast, forcing William to dodge. The blade scorched the floor where he had just been standing. William grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground, using it as a makeshift weapon. He blocked the next strike, sparks flying with every hit. Mira worked furiously at the console. "Almost there. Keep him busy." Valere attacked again. William blocked and swung back, landing a solid hit to Valere's side. But Valere was stronger, faster. He knocked William back with a hard strike to the chest, sending him crashing into the wall. William gasped for air, pain shooting through his ribs. Valere raised his blade. "You are never strong enough to stand against me." William gritted his teeth and stood again, blood dripping from his lip. "Maybe not, but I'm not alone." Behind Valere, Mira shouted. Weapons shut down in progress. Valere turned, rage filling his face. He charged toward the console. William threw himself at Valere, tackling him to the ground. They struggled, fists landing heavy blows. Valere reached for his blade, but William pinned his arm, punching again and again. Mira screamed, "Hold him! Almost done." Valere headbutted William, breaking free. He grabbed the blade and slashed, cutting deep into William's shoulder. William cried out in pain, but refused to fall. He grabbed the blade's handle with both hands, forcing it aside. With all his strength, he shoved Valere back toward the main power core. The console lights flashed. Mira hit the final command. Weapon shutdown complete. The station shook violently as the link to Project Eclipse collapsed. The black crystal weapon was dead. Velair's last move had failed. Velair roared in fury, swinging wildly. No, you can't stop me. But William had nothing left to lose. With one final push, he drove Velair backward, slamming him into the crackling power core. Sparks erupted. Velair screamed as energy surged through him, his body collapsing to the floor. It was over. The alarm stopped. The weapons power down. The station fell silent. Mira ran to William's side, helping him to his feet. You did it. You stopped him. William looked down at Velair's lifeless body, breathing hard. We did. Together, they made their way out of the burning chamber. Outside, the rebel forces had taken control of the station. Council soldiers had surrendered or fled. The galaxy was watching, and it had already begun to change. William stood on the platform, looking out at the fleets in space. The war wasn't over. The future was uncertain. But one thing was clear. Velair was gone. The weapon was destroyed. And the galaxy was finally free to choose its own path. For the first time in days, the galaxy was silent. No more alarms. No more lies. No more destruction. William Carter stood on the open deck of a small rebel cruiser, staring out into the sea of stars. The battle for the network hub was over. The Carthian fleet had retreated, their forces broken. The Galactic Council had collapsed, their leaders fleeing into the shadows. News of Velair's death had spread quickly. Some cheered, some stayed silent, but no one dared to call him a hero anymore. The galaxy had seen the truth, and the galaxy had chosen to stand. William's body ached. His shoulder was still bandaged from the fight, but he was alive, and more importantly, so was hope. Mira Voss stood beside him, her face tired but calm. She watched the stars quietly, as if waiting for something. Do you think it's really over? She asked softly. William shook his head. No, the council is gone, but the galaxy is still broken. People are angry, lost, scared. There's no telling what comes next. Mira nodded slowly. At least the weapon is gone. At least the truth is out. William turned to face her. What about you? What will you do now? Mira looked back toward the fleets gathering in the distance. Ships from different worlds, no longer flying the council's flag. I'll stay, she said quietly. Help rebuild what I can. Someone has to help them start over. William placed a hand on her shoulder, grateful for all they had done together. You'll do more than help. You'll lead them. Mira smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. What about you? Will you stay? William glanced down at his hands. He had spent so many years running, hiding, carrying the weight of humanity's banishment. He had fought to clear their name, and he had done it. But his place was never here, not anymore. He turned his gaze toward the stars, toward the distant light of Earth's system. I've done what I came to do, he whispered. It's time I go home. Mira nodded in understanding. Goodbye, William. Goodbye, Mira. They stood for a moment longer before parting ways. William boarded a small shuttle, alone this time. As the engines powered up, he took one last look at the station and the fleets beyond it. The future was theirs now. It belonged to all of them, not to a council, not to a tyrant, not to fear. He set the course for Lunar Base 17. As the stars stretched past his window, William leaned back in his seat. His journey was over, but something told him humanity's next chapter was only beginning. And this time, it would be written by choice, not by fear. The obsidian blade crossed the void one last time, carrying William Carter home.